Okay, so we've got an email that's come through from Emma, and if you want to get in touch, you can go via gutology.co.uk and just reach out to us there, or on Instagram, Gutology Project. And it's from Emma, and she says, "Thank you so much for bringing out such an informative and interesting podcast about gut health. It's refreshing to listen to a British podcast on the subject, because the majority of them are American or Australian. I've had so many messages from people saying the same thing. So the American stuff's great, and the Australian stuff. I've listened to lots of it. So, but it isn't, it's obviously being British. That's nice to hear." She said, "My brief story is that I've suffered with IBS D for over a decade now. Last October, I was having a particularly bad time. I sought the help of a nutritionist. It hasn't really helped. I've been left underweight, and I've had sleep problems from adrenal supplements. I've also spent nearly £3,000 on consultation, tests and supplements. I've been diagnosed with leaky gut, SIBO and adrenal fatigue. I can still work and get on with things, but obviously this is having a massive impact on her life." So I just want to start with, from my personal experience of going through this myself, is that there is a major issue with finding the right nutritionist, finding somebody that deals in functional medicine who is able to interpret complex gold standard gut tests. That's the difficult thing. And I will say right from the off, if people are watching this, if you go to patreon.com/gutology, we will connect you with a gutology nutritionist that is fully trained. And that's just, for me, 10 years ago, that would have been really useful to find. But let's, Julia, just start with IBS D. How many people have you seen in your clinic with it? And what has their journey been, and what stage are some of them at now? That's always a good place to start.
So IBS D means irritable bowel syndrome that's diarrhea predominant, rather than IBS C, which would be constipation dominant. So a lot. I couldn't count how many people that I've seen with this condition. It's actually really, really common, but there's lots of different underlying causes. So for somebody that had IBS D to the point that it was really interfering with their life, we would do tests in the earlier stages just to shortcut the process of what to do, what we're looking for. But most commonly, the sort of things that come up with IBS D, SIBO a lot of the time, stress actually. So
just for people that don't know what it is, that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Yeah. So it's when the bacteria, there's bacteria all throughout your gastrointestinal tract, but the huge numbers of bacteria are meant to be in your colon. So in the small intestine, if that starts to get a lot of bacteria, a lot of bugs growing really rapidly in that area, it actually causes problems, because it can cause a lot of gas and bloating and those sorts of symptoms. And it can interfere with how you digest and break down your food, and also how you absorb your food. So SIBO as an issue is very, very common and associated with actually most cases of IBS. But it has such an impact on the wider body and things like energy and fatigue too, because you're not absorbing the nutrients, because you can't break them down properly. So there's SIBO is a entirely fixable condition. It's something that you can have a test for, or you can deduce to a point what's going on, but the test will confirm it, and also they will tell you what type it is, which is really useful, because you treat it differently depending on what type of bacteria was found in the small intestine. So that might be something that's going on here with Emma.
And people that, I think people are aware that you go on these, you take supplements, you go on a special diet, you recover from it. I think the question that I always wanted to know when I was going through it is, on the other side of that, if it is fixable, can you then go on to lead a relatively normal life with a normal diet, or are you going to spend, or is the cost the rest of your life is eating boiled chicken breast?
No. So always the aim is to get people to a point where they just don't have to worry about their food. But often I tend to see the more severe of cases in my practice. So they have been through such a lot. So by the time they get to the point where they're completely well, they've got a great intuition about what foods that are right for them. So it really rarely happens when people get well from such a journey of digestive problems and then go back to a really high sugar diet and really processed food. They just don't really do that because they've seen what it can do. So they kind of use the what they know about the power of food to go forward, but in a really balanced way. So eating a really wholesome diet, but lower on the stuff that tends to aggravate gut problems.
She said, Emma said on here as well, is that she was, they put her on a paleo diet, but she lost a lot of weight doing that. So, it's obviously really difficult via email to, but I think what's really important is saying to Emma, like, there are ways of going through a SIBO protocol where you can find significant improvements, but that issue about being put on a paleo diet and losing weight, I lost a lot of weight when I went on the restrictive diet, and it's something you obviously need to be really wary of that.
Yeah, it needs to be a balance, and it depends what the weight is to start with. Some people need to lose a lot of weight as part of the program, so that would be okay. If somebody's going underweight and it feels dangerous, it's not suitable, and you need to follow a different path for that person. But people can get too swayed by feeling that there's one route or one protocol for a condition, and there never is. There's so many different ways of achieving the health back again from somebody that's got IBS. So if something is making somebody worse to a point that it's becoming unproductive, it's clearly not the right route. But what I would say is that with healing somebody who's got quite a severe gut problem, you do hit bumps in the road. So there's an element where I would coach somebody through a really, really bad time to say, stick with it because you need to, but it's going to take about this long and this is what's going to happen next. And then we're going to just take it one day at a time. So
I think that's the idea for anyone that's watching this, whatever you're going through, whether you're trying to improve a certain condition. Yeah, it's about finding a nutritionist, someone that's trained in functional medicine that you trust, that also has an understanding on a personal level and an emotional level what you're going through, and actually what a huge impact these conditions have on people's lives, and on people's well-being. It's a long old journey, but there is sort of light at the end of the tunnel. And the whole idea about this is, like, if you are going to spend money, how can you do it in a frugal way, in a sensible way, where you've got clarity, absolute clarity in what the pathway is. So if you want to find out more, go to gutology.co.uk, or if you want to book an appointment with one of our guys, you can just go via patreon.com/gutology. And Emma, best of luck with your journey.